Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. My name is Austin Brubaker. It is my privilege to be able to do this show with you guys. Just me today, as this is a Monday show that I'll be presenting you guys, where we'll be able to dive into a lot of the numbers with the Dodgers baseball and be talking a lot of different things because we are a week away from the winter meetings. I actually have a little bit of knowledge of that, not of the winter meetings in general, but just here in the state of Michigan, it's snowing like crazy. I think the past couple of days we've gotten 8 to 10 inches of snow. I'm sure a lot of you guys are grateful to be in the Southern California area, but what that means with snowfall coming here is that means the offseason is starting to heat up, and the Los Angeles Dodgers are going to have to make some moves upcoming to make this roster as complete as it can be. There's not a whole lot of news that is going on in the world of Dodgers baseball. Not a lot of things are transpiring as of yet. But I think things are eventually going to be coming. Particularly, we've talked a lot about this offseason in the outfield / second base market and in the bullpen type area. And so what we're going to do today is actually a little bit of an exercise that Casey and I did on our show on Friday. So if you guys were there on Friday or had a chance to be able to watch the show on Friday, Casey and I went through an exercise where we talked through innings pitched. And typically throughout the course of a baseball season, there is a pretty steady, consistent number of innings pitched that teams get to allot throughout the course of the season. And what Casey and I were able to do, we're able to map out a lot of those innings. We're going to go through a very similar exercise, except it's going to be much more visible for you guys to be able to see, as well as we're also, and this is the thing that we're going to be addressing first, is we're going to be talking about plate appearances. Because Casey and I last week talked about roles in particular, and a large part of, especially of the plate appearance role, had to do with more of the fringe guys. Some of the guys like a Hae-Sung Kim or a Alex Freeland. How many plate appearances do we want to give to a Dalton Rushing? And typically with plate appearances, it's pretty common to have the same number of plate appearances year on year, or around the same number of plate appearances, especially if the offense is performing as well as the Dodgers offense is expected to perform next season. So we're actually going to go through both of those exercises. You'll be able to physically see the number of plate appearances that are remaining for the Dodgers, as well as you guys have the opportunity to be able to run through this exercise on your own. Now, I know there's some jokes that are going around that I always give you guys homework. Well, I'm giving you guys a little bit of extra homework as well, but really what it is it's giving you guys resources to be able to map out to see if it is possible, given the Dodgers roster and based off of the moves that you want the Dodgers to make, whether you can give a certain number of plate appearances to all of these guys, how many innings can you and should you allot for each one of these guys, especially some of the younger guys that you want to see grow and develop, because growth and development has to be made at the major league level. And there is certainly some sacrifice and certainly some investment that the Dodgers have to make these young guys actually be able to perform, to answer some very serious questions like, is Alex Freeland a realistic possibility for 2027 at third base position? If the Dodgers do not invest in major league plate appearances in 2026 in Alex Freeland, you will not have an answer to that question, and you will be left with an unknown as Max Muncy enters free agency after this season. After the 2026 season. There's a lot of questions for the Dodgers to be able to answer, and there's a lot of different ways in which they can invest the plate appearances in innings. Now, I will be frank, this is really early to be able to do this. As the title of the show says, far too early projections for plate appearances and innings pitched. But what this exercise is intended to do is to show you where sacrifices might have to be made. And if you want to give certain plate appearances or a certain number of innings to these guys, it's going to have to come at a drawback from certain other areas and certain other players as well. So we're going to be diving into that. I can't thank you guys enough for tuning in and going through this exercise with me. Sammy Boy Smith, good afternoon to you. Showtime LA, thanks for joining us. Hey, Austin, I really think we get one of Diaz or Williams. Yeah, at the end of the show, which I don't have a ton of time to do the show today. I've got about an hour that I can do, so we'll be rolling here through about 3:15 Pacific. So another 55 minutes or so. I think the Dodgers get one of Diaz or Williams. Some of the right-handed relief pitchers are starting to come off off the board. Raisel Iglesias, he is back to Atlanta. Ryan Helsley is with Baltimore. There was a couple of other ones that were of notice that of which some of the other players that I had highlighted for the Dodgers that have signed to other teams. Still a lot of other good pitchers out there for the Dodgers to be able to target, but Diaz and Devin Williams certainly are at the top of the list of free agent right-handed relievers. The question is, how many years do you want to give them? Not the money. Doesn't matter to the Dodgers. With Diaz, it comes with the qualifying offer, which with the Dodgers, that is something that for a relief pitcher, I can't really imagine that they would be too eager to give out, because the qualifying offer comes with pretty serious cost in terms of prospect capital. I believe you lose 2 draft picks, a second and a fifth, I believe is what it is for the Dodgers, as well as $1 million in international bonus pool money. That seems like something that the Dodgers would give up. However, the Dodgers have to have some of those pieces in order to continue to have a quote-unquote good farm system. And the reason why the Dodgers have a good farm system is because they develop, they grow players, and they want to use that as supplemental pieces to either trade them to acquire additional talent or potentially use them to be able to add some youth to this lineup. I don't think that's going to be the one reason why the Dodgers don't sign Edwin Diaz, but I think it might be playing a little bit of a bigger role than what you might have imagined. Showtime LA, also I think Quintero should start in Double-A. Tibbs feels like expendable to me. Tibbs was really solid with what he was able to contribute with the Tulsa Drillers last year. Would not give up on players quite yet, and especially with James Tibbs. I believe he is not eligible for the Rule 5 draft until after the 2027 season. I believe both Earhart and Tibbs are eligible for the Rule 5 draft after the 2027 season. And that means they have a lot of time to be able to develop him. And with Quintero, look, Q had a little bit of time with Great Lakes. I wouldn't rush these guys throughout the system, selfishly, because I'm a huge fan of Great Lakes, and I want to see Eduardo Quintero in Great Lakes come April this upcoming year. But with Quintero, there's going to be a lot of outfield talent that is crammed into Tulsa. You have George, you got Hope, you got DePaula, that are all very likely to be at Double-A. You also have some other guys like Earhart and Tibbs that are question marks whether they'll start the season in Tulsa or they'll start the season in Oklahoma City. They're kind of on the edge right there. You also have some other players that are really solid, like Cole Myers, who's going to be completely under the radar, or Chris Newell and a Damon Keith, who there's question marks of where they're going to start. So Quintero, I wouldn't anticipate starting the season in Tulsa just because he didn't spend as much time in Great Lakes. Talent certainly is there, though. And looks like Showtime LA got 5 inches in KC as well. So good to see you sharing with some of the snow as well. CNAF, thank you very much for joining us. Always happy to see you be part of the show. Mr. Classic, what's up to you as well? Shiva Jones, I'm certain that Gretterall get any mound appearances. We will get to that once we go through the innings pitch type total, but certainly he's been dealing with a lot of injuries, and I don't know if he is one of the guys that the Dodgers can count on accruing a lot of innings, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Justin Lamas, thank you for joining us. It's 37 degrees Fahrenheit in France, so a little bit cold over there. Showtime LA, Freeland and Edmond should get platooned at second base. We'll talk about that as well. I'm a little bit on the page. I'm on a similar page, especially with the platoon left-handed bat with Tommy Edmond, with him particularly excelling against left-handed pitching. I think if Tommy Edmond, you take advantage of his versatility, combined with the fact that he hits well versus lefties, and you provide some supplemental playing time for either Freeland or Kim, I think that's probably the path that the Dodgers should go, assuming that they don't go for somebody like a Brendan Donovan. If you go for a Brendan Donovan, then he fills that exact same role, but then it becomes a 3-way battle between Ward, Freeland, and Kim of who gets playing time on the roster. Let's see. Continuing on with this, Sammy Boy Smith, Suarez would be better. Talking about Robert Suarez being a potential option. Let's see. You would lose some of your picks, 4th rounder with Diaz. I don't remember if with the tax bracket that the Dodgers are at, or with going over the luxury tax a certain number of times. It could possibly be even more extreme than that, but either way, you're losing a draft pick, you're losing international bonus pool money that has a certain cost to it. Eli Jones will be important to see how well Gavin Stone can pitch now that he is post-surgery. Shoulder surgery makes things more unpredictable. Absolutely rooting for Gavin Stone. Great individual, good friend here at Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. Al Minerva, thank you for joining us as well. Tark the Shark, Devin Williams, and Fairbanks for relief. Trade for Brendan Donovan. That'd be a really great addition to the mix. Craig Osterberg, thank you for joining us as well. Showtime LA, just clarify, not giving up on Tibbs per se, just feel like more likely to be traded given his limited positional flexibility and he's older, which I believe he can play first base as well, which if you want to keep him in Tulsa, that's probably where he's going to get a lot of playing time, as we saw towards the end of last year. And then we get a question, a fascinating question. How about center fielder Jake Myers from Houston in a trade? What do you guys think? So Jake Myers wasn't somebody that was initially on my list. I actually did a little bit of research just because there's been some rumblings on him today, and I want to make sure that we go over this. Let me pull up some of my numbers that we have right here. So if you guys remember the off-season spreadsheet, giant spreadsheet that I had with all the free agent outfielders, I'm going to go ahead and pull that up just so you guys can see some of the numbers for Jake Myers, and we'll go ahead and pull that up right here. All right, so this is the spreadsheet that I had, did a little bit of research. Jake Myers, some of the things that you're going to notice about him, he had a much better 2025 season than what he had the previous two seasons. And again, with the statistics that I'm looking at, 2023 through 2025 stats, because I don't want to be skewed by one season. Profile-wise, he's going to be very similar to a Harrison Bader. That is what you're looking at with Jake Myers. It's not explosive offensively. Past three seasons, about a 92 WRC plus. Much better, a little bit above league average last year, but the previous two seasons with a little bit more plate appearances, it was about an 85 WRC plus player. You average it out, it's about a 92 WRC plus. 243, 310, 370 for Jake Myers. Again, this is who we're looking at right now. Expected statistics, right in line with what he's actually producing. Biggest thing about him, a little bit more of a left-handed hitter, or better against left-handed pitching than right-handed pitching, which again, if you know where I stand, I want somebody who's going to hit right-handed pitching well. The interesting thing about Jake Meyer is he was a reverse splits guy last year, a little bit better versus righties than lefties last year. However, the previous two seasons, he was not good versus right-handed pitching, more of a 71 to 78 WRC plus player versus righties. I wouldn't expect him to be a great hitter versus righties. Not a ton of power. Walks and strikeouts right around league average to slightly below league average, 7.4 and 22%. This is where his value is, though, is if you are looking specifically for someone who's going to shore up defense and you want him in center field and you want to go ahead and move Andy Pages to right, Teoscar Hernandez to left field, Jake Myers would fill in that role, and he would do it extraordinarily well. Over the past three seasons, 15 defensive runs saved, 29 outs above average, and 24 field and run value. He is extraordinarily solid defensively in the outfield. So just overall with Jake Myers, again, Houston Astro, you would have to deal with some sort of trade. He's got 2 years of club control. He just reminds me very much of a Harrison Bader type of profile, and especially if you are not wanting to make any sort of trade pieces with Houston Astros, I just don't see the massive upgrade for Jake Myers over going out and just signing somebody like a Harrison Bader. He perhaps could be an alternative, but if you were to go get a Jake Myers, you would have to give up some sort of player, likely some sort of controllable starting pitcher would probably be what Houston is looking for, which the Dodgers have plenty controllable starting pitchers, but do you want to give up that asset when you can go ahead and get basically the same player in Harrison Bader for around the same contract, although Harrison Bader is probably going to be looking for a 3+ year deal with the season that he had. I just see them as too similar a profile of players, and I would prefer somebody, while center field is great for a Jake Myers, I would prefer somebody who would be a little bit better against right-handed pitching. Again, doesn't have a long track record of hitting well versus right-handed pitching, and I'm a little bit suspect of the underlying metrics from the past couple of years to completely buy into what he did in 2025. Solid ball player, looks like somebody that especially if he is traded, is going to make a lot of teams happy, particularly because of his defense, but it's not going to be the top of the list for me, at least as of right now. So it's certainly one that wasn't under consideration before, but a fascinating type of deal that you could look into a little bit and at least make some sort of argument to adding him to the mix because of his defense. Let's see, continuing on with a couple of these. Eli Jones assumed Noah Miller will be gone from the Dodgers organization. Now hoping he can get the back going. Love watching him play shortstop. Talking about the Rule 5 draft, which will take place in about a week and a half or so. Noah Miller gets taken. I'd be super happy for Noah and would be rooting for him to have a lot of success. Defensively, he is right there as a defensive shortstop in Major League Baseball and one of the better shortstops in all of minor league baseball. I believe won a minor league Gold Glove for his performance back in 2023 and continues to be really solid. It's the bat that just needs to get going for Miller to get playing time. Showtime LA, again, Rule 5 draft type stuff. Love the crowd that we have here at Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. Think Hubek gets taken in the Rule 5 draft, or will he stay in the organization? One thing that's a little bit tricky about Peter Hubek, he did miss the last 2 months or so of the regular season from Tulsa, so he didn't get a chance to go through the process of really continuing his development, or I just didn't get a chance to finish off his showcase. He actually had a really good start to the 2025 season, but then just because he didn't continue with that process and development and missed the past 2 months or so, I would say it's probably unlikely that he gets taken. Again, you have to keep this player on your 26-man roster for the entirety of the 2026 season, and Peter Hubek is certainly talented enough to be able to do so, but I think there's just a little bit more refining that he needs to do that other teams are going to be looking for. And typically when you're looking at players, it's a lot more difficult to be able to stash a starting pitcher on your 40-man roster. That would be my expectation. I would expect Hubek to stay in the organization, but if another team takes him, be super happy if that happens. We'll have more about Rule 5 draft and some of the players that you could anticipate being taken probably coming up within the next week or so. Casey and I probably will do some sort of show this week. I don't know which day that is going to be, but I'm sure we'll dive into Rule 5 draft, guys, especially if no news breaks. We'll be talking about that. Maybe we'll talk about some underrated prospects within the organization because there's a lot of talented players that you should know about within this system. All right, I want to go ahead and move on. We'll get back into the comments, so continue to leave your comments in the video. We'll get back to that in just a second, but what I want to do is I want to transition a little bit into projections for innings pitched, and first actually is going to be plate appearances. So I put the link into a copy that you can download and actually fill this out on your own in just a little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to cut over to this, and this is going to be what we're going to be looking at right now. It's a little bit difficult to see right now. This is just to show you everything. We'll zoom in just a minute. But basically what we have, and we're going to start with plate appearances first, is because there is around 6,200 plate appearances that the Los Angeles Dodgers can give out and expect to give out in the 2026 season. Last year, I believe it was 61-87 was the Los Angeles Dodgers plate appearances given out. Previous 2 seasons, reason why I know this is because I looked this up earlier in the day. Don't just have these numbers memorized in my brain. I think it was a little bit more. I think one of the years was about 6,300. And one of the years, it's always around 6,200. Perhaps it's a little bit more if the Dodgers offense performs well. Obviously, if you perform well, you're going to get more plate appearances. It's not quite as stable as innings pitched, but it's typically around 6,200 plate appearances that you get to give out. So what I have is 2025 plate appearances. How many plate appearances did an individual player get in 2025, 2024, 2023? As well as the past 3 seasons with their WRC plus at the major league level. Again, all of these totals are for major league regular season stats. That's a little bit different than what we're going to be looking at for innings pitched in a little bit, and there's a reason for that. One thing also to note, based off of splits by team, with 6,200 plate appearances being given out total, there typically is about 4,500 This is rough estimates, but around 4,500 given out to right-handed pitching and about 1,700 to left-handed pitching. If you have platoon players, that's going to be a little bit more important. And so what we're going to do with this is we're going to go through a little bit of an exercise, and we're going to actually write out the number of plate appearances just so you guys can see how quickly this math starts to go when the Dodgers are going through and divvying up playing time for each one of these players. So one of the things you're going to see is we have the total number of plate appearances down here that are given out. What we'll also notice, and this is going to be the important measure, it's why it's highlighted in yellow, is this is going to tell us how many plate appearances we have remaining. So, for example, Shohei Ohtani. Let's talk a little bit about Shohei Ohtani, because for the past 3 seasons at the major league level, he's had 727, 731, and 599 plate appearances, and he has performed incredibly well, incredibly stable as an offensive powerhouse in the 170 to 180 WRC plus range. He obviously is going to be somebody that's going to get a ton of plate appearances for the Los Angeles Dodgers with the past 3 years, and perhaps slightly less with the pitching that he has to do, maybe a couple extra days off, but still with Shohei Ohtani, you want him in the lineup as much as you possibly can get him, because again, this offensive dominance is not seen throughout the rest of the lineup. The rest of the lineup is really good. It's not Shohei Ohtani good. It's not 170 to 180 WRC plus good. And so you're still expecting, I would say, probably about 700 plate appearances for Shohei this upcoming year. That takes off about 30 plate appearances from what he's had the past 2 seasons, but that still keeps him at the top of the lineup. That still keeps him well in the lineup and still well part of what the Dodgers are able to do. What you'll notice, as soon as you add 700 plate appearances, the total number of plate appearances remaining drops down to 5,500. Now with the Dodgers only have 5,500 plate appearances remaining. And what you're going to notice, let's say Ha-Seong Kim gets 5,600 plate appearances this upcoming season. Obviously not going to happen, but you'll notice this goes into red, and that is a negative 100. That means we've given out too many plate appearances. That's not going to work. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through a little bit of this exercise and talk through each one of these players. We'll talk through how I see their potential role being placed, and then what's going to be left over, what's going to potentially be available for both the younger players and for players that could be added to through the winter meetings and through the rest of the offseason, because the Dodgers offense is not complete. But I think we need to have a understanding or some sort of game plan going into the season as to what we expect for each one of these players, how much playing time can we expect for them, and what specific role do we envision for them, and how does that math add up in terms of plate appearances and times that the Dodgers can actually invest in each one of these players. So, Shohei Ohtani, easy 700 plate appearances, something like that. Again, download the Excel spreadsheet and do this exercise on your own as well so you can see how the math plays out. Mookie Betts at the shortstop position. Past 3 seasons, 663, 516, and 693 plate appearances. What's going to be fascinating with Mookie Betts is he going to be somebody that's going to be, obviously he's an everyday type of player, but as Mookie Betts starts to age a little bit, are we going to see the Los Angeles Dodgers start to give him a little bit of additional rest? And this is not a Mookie Betts exclusive type of conversation, because this is also a Freddie Freeman conversation as well. Freddie Freeman is somebody who's starting to get up there with age a little bit and is somebody that you want to be healthy as soon as you get into October. With Mookie Betts playing a very demanding position at shortstop, how many innings or how many plate appearances do you want to have him go? Or rather, another way to be able to put this, how many days off do you want to give Mookie Betts in the 2026 regular season with him playing shortstop each and every single day and with him getting another year older? Are you wanting to incorporate more rest with Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, who will not take that rest probably lightly and will probably fight to get more playing time, but it is probably for the best interest of the Los Angeles Dodgers and for these players that they get additional rest so that they are healthy going into October. With Mookie Betts, last year, 663 plate appearances. That's a whole lot of plate appearances. And with the Dodgers having some coverage at the shortstop position, you have Alex Freeland, not Dalton Rushing. You have Ha-Seong Kim. You probably are going to have a Miguel Rojas that's going to be back in the mix. And you have a Tommy Edman. All can play shortstop. I'm not saying Mookie Betts, take your foot off the accelerator and play significantly less plate appearances, but a couple of extra days off sprinkled out throughout the season could actually be something that could be helpful for Mookie Betts. 663 last year for plate appearances. I'm just going to do slightly more. Let's do about 625 for Mookie Betts. I have not gone through this exercise, so I have no idea how this math is going to work, but that's just some of my thoughts that I have. With Freddie Freeman, past 3 seasons, about 630, 638, and 730 for him. When we're talking about Freddie Freeman, I think you can't talk about Freddie Freeman and what he is able to do on this Dodgers roster without at least somewhat mentioning Dalton Rushing. Now, here's why I say that. It's not because Freddie Freeman and Dalton Rushing are the same player. Freddie Freeman's a Hall of Famer. Dalton Rushing is still trying to establish himself at the big league level. It is because you are trying to find some sort of way to get Dalton Rushing into the mix as a player and trying to find different plate appearances for Dalton Rushing. Well, right now, the 2 positions that Dalton Rushing can play, excluding DH, which is covered by Shohei Ohtani, he's getting a ton of plate appearances. I wouldn't expect it any other way, is Dalton Rushing can only play catcher and first base. Now, he has played outfield in the past. However, the Dodgers moved off of that specifically during the past season when they knew that he was going to come up to the roster and instead had him be more of a catcher first type of player. I don't anticipate, especially if Teoscar Hernandez is in the outfield going into 2026, I don't see a world in which Dalton Rushing is going to get significant playing time at the outfield position, which means that if you want to give him more playing time aside from the catching position, it likely is going to come at first base. And if it comes at first base, you're going to have to somewhat convince Freddie Freeman, who it's very unlikely to want to give up much plate appearances at all, to get a slightly reduced role. Not a reduced role in that he's taking off 2 days a week to let Dalton Rushing play first base, but maybe once every other week, once every week and a half or something like that, once a week, to be able to get some additional playing time for Dalton Rushing, to invest in that talent could be part of the equation for Freddie Freeman going forward. Going into this upcoming year, I know 627 seems like it's a lot. It absolutely is. Some of that comes from a little bit of time, I believe, that he missed. But we'll give a little bit less time with that, but we'll still give an incredible amount of time for Freddie Freeman to be able to go out there and develop. And we'll say that Dalton Rushing, once every 2 weeks, once every week and a half or so, is able to get a start at first base. Hopefully he's able to get, and this would be kind of my goal, what I would see with Dalton Rushing is maybe 20-ish starts at first base. That gives Freddie Freeman the ability to play 142 games in the regular season, allows him to be able to continue to do that while also giving a little bit of time as he gets older, just to not overuse him going into October. And so we're talking maybe 575 plate appearances for a Freddie Freeman. Long conversation. I think it's intertwined with trying to get Dalton Rushing some additional playing time, because I fully anticipate Dalton Rushing, once Ben Roethlisberger was designated for assignment and sent to the Cincinnati Reds, Dalton Rushing to be your backup catcher. You want to invest time and plate appearances into him. What's one way that you can do it besides taking up all of Will Smith's time at the catching position is to give some additional plate appearances for a Freddie Freeman. Next up is Max Muncy. Max Muncy has obviously missed some time with injury the past couple of seasons. 388, 293, and 579 plate appearances respectively. But again, every single time Max Muncy is at the plate, he produces 137, 133, 117 WRC plus going back from 2025 to 2023. Max Muncy is a really good offensive third baseman. Defensively, he's slightly below league average, but still a really good contributor. And you can tell when this offense is missing out on a player like a Max Muncy, because the offense feels it. The plate appearance quality seems to dip because Max Muncy is phenomenal at being able to do that. One thing, however, that you could look for potentially going into the 2026 season is Max Muncy has missed a lot of time with injury. And I don't know how much the Dodgers are going to be able to rely upon him on an everyday type of basis, because he is starting to get up there in age. He's 35, 36 years old, entering in his last season with the Los Angeles Dodgers. I think they want to be a little bit strategic on how they go about playing Max Muncy. And this is where I get into the idea of why don't they introduce a, what I quote unquote, soft platoon with Max Muncy. And what I mean by that is I still want Max Muncy to be in the lineup almost every single day for the Los Angeles Dodgers. However, I think you could see some plate appearances going to some other players that hit better versus left-handed pitching. Max Muncy is phenomenal against right-handed pitching. Against lefties the past 3 seasons, it's only a 78 WRC+. It's not horrible, but not somebody that you want in the lineup each and every single day versus left-handed pitching. If you could have a player that hits better versus left-handed pitching that can give some additional rest to a Max Muncy, I actually think that's going to be a benefit for him. And the player that I look at for that actually is Miguel Rojas. Miguel Rojas, I see as a soft platoon type of player with a Max Muncy, only because I think what they're able to do together would work out really well for the Dodgers' benefit. Miguel Rojas over the past 3 seasons is a 110, 113 WRC plus versus left-handed pitching. He would hit well versus lefties. He would give some additional time off to Max Muncy to try to lessen the chance that he's injured throughout the course of the regular season and provide a little bit of stability. Again, vast majority of plate appearances are given to right-handed pitching or versus right-handed pitching versus left-handed pitching, which means Max Muncy would still be getting a vast majority of the playing time at third base while also being able to incorporate some rest for him. So that's a long way to be able to say I think that's probably the ideal platoon partner. You would obviously love it to be a little bit more Alex Freeland. However, as we'll talk about in a little bit, Alex Freeland is a much better hitter versus right-handed pitching than left-handed pitching. The exact same as Max Muncy. That's not a platoon. That's not a platoon avenue that's going to work at the third base position, even though that would probably be ideal by the Dodgers standard and the Dodgers mindset as far as investing playing time in somebody that's coming up through the system. So Max Muncy, 388, 293, 579. We'll go ahead and give this around... debating between 400 and 425. Let's give it 425. Let's give him a little bit extra plate appearances for him. Will Smith, 436, 544, 554 plate appearances the past 3 seasons. Will Smith, obviously, all-star catcher. It keeps up with the production, especially last year. Last year was phenomenal, 153 WRC+. plus. There's been some debate in the comments that we've had with some of the videos in Dodgers Daily, and I actually agree with, I believe it's Jay that made this statement. I think a little less of Will Smith is more for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And what I mean by that is the catching position is extremely demanding. And we've seen Will Smith come off with extraordinary starts at the beginning of the season, then start to fade off a little bit. I think with what they were attempting to do with doing a Will Smith, Dalton rushing catch behind the plate edition is they were trying to lessen the load of Will Smith. Will Smith had to take a vast majority of the games when Austin Barnes was behind the plate, just because Austin Barnes in the later years was not performing to an offensive standard that the Dodgers were looking for. Now, Dalton rushing didn't perform great last year, no doubt about it. But I think the Dodgers have more hope in Dalton rushing being able to produce offensively going forward. Different conversation for a different time. And I think what they're intentional about doing with that is they can give and invest more playing time in Dalton rushing while taking some of the burden off of Will Smith, similar to how I don't want Will Smith to break down as the season goes on, like I don't want Max Muncy to break as the season goes on. And going into this, it's a similar conversation. You can't have the Freddie Freeman conversation without trying to incorporate ways to get Dalton rushing in the mix. I don't think you can have the Will Smith conversation without finding ways to be able to get Dalton rushing into the mix. And when we're talking about Dalton rushing, if we're talking about maybe 20-ish games at first base, giving some breathing time to a Freddie Freeman as he gets older to try to make sure he stays as healthy as long as Freddie Freeman possibly can. I think you could probably pencil in, and ideally you start with a 2/3, 1/3 ratio for catching Will Smith to Dalton rushing, which equates out to, I think I did the math, about 108 games for Will Smith and 54 for Dalton rushing. I think you could bump that up to maybe 60-ish games for Dalton rushing and then you put in the additional 20 games at first base. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to fill out Dalton rushing right now, because that gets him to about 81 games. That gives him every other game. Dalton rushing is finding a way to be able to get on the field, at least in the overall general landscape of where things are at. And I think you get Dalton rushing up to, and last year he only had 155 plate appearances, but if you can get Dalton rushing up to maybe about, it's about 300 to 325 plate appearances, I think that would be a fair investment to give Dalton rushing throughout the course of the season. And then with Will Smith, if Dalton rushing is taking 60-ish games behind the plate, gives you about 102 with Will Smith. That seems low, but actually I think that would be beneficial for Will Smith, because that keeps him as fresh and healthy to go as possible, because when it comes to October, unless Dalton rushing has a major breakout season, the Dodgers are going to need Will Smith behind the plate as much as possible, and you could see him still getting the bulk of the plate appearances. And we saw with a lesser role last year, Will Smith be able to produce. So I still think you're going to get Will Smith a lot of plate appearances. I think you're talking still 400, let's actually put 425 plate appearances for Will Smith. That keeps him right around in line with what he had last year. And last year he missed a little bit of time with injury. I think that keeps him a little bit fresh. So that gets through those names. So we've only gone through 6 names, and basically half the plate appearances are already taken up. And we haven't even gotten to any of the outfielders or anybody yet. Let's move on to Teoscar Hernandez first. Now, Teoscar Hernandez is somebody who's of subject to many trade talks, only because he is somebody that defensively was a liability for the Dodgers last year, and offensively did not perform incredibly well. With Teoscar Hernandez, because he does not perform well defensively, which it does not matter whether it's left field or right field. A lot of people are making the claim, move Teoscar Hernandez back to left field, when exactly the same time last year, they saw Teoscar Hernandez be a poor left fielder, and they were saying, if only Teoscar Hernandez was in right field, that's where he has to be. Well, the Dodgers saw both experiments, when he was in left and when he was in right. And he's not a great defensive outfielder. I don't think it matters whether he's in left or right field. I think there would probably be less triples if he is in left field, but perhaps more batted balls in left field that you don't necessarily want to see for Teoscar Hernandez. So it's a little bit of a wash for me. The overall, not a good defensive player. Last year, around a league average offensive player. That is not the type of Teoscar Hernandez that's going to be valuable for this team. He has to be somebody that hits at least at a 15% above league average clip to provide some value for this club. Ideally, it would be more closer to his 2024 stats, when he put a 132 WRC plus on the field. I know there's a lot of rumors about him potentially being traded, which I'm not going to completely discount that, just because of the defensive liability that he is right now. And with the addition of Ryan Ward added to the 40-man roster, I still have a really hard time seeing the Dodgers trade him. And if they don't trade him, he is an everyday type of player. They can add an everyday outfielder to the mix, but assuming that Alex Call is the 4th outfielder, which I'm still under the assumption that Alex Call is the 4th outfielder, that means Teoscar Hernandez is playing almost every single day. Last 3 seasons, 546 plate appearances, 652, and 678. I think it's probably going to be more in line with last year, even though he missed some time with injury, only because I think later in the game they might take Teoscar Hernandez out quite a bit, just to provide a little bit better of a defensive lineman. But I still think you're talking about, with Teoscar Hernandez, still probably talking about 525 different plate appearances for Teo this upcoming year. A lot of plate appearances for Teoscar Hernandez, what you're going to give him. That leaves you with 2,600 plate appearances left to give out. Let's actually go to his outfield partner right now, Andy Pages. This is somebody that I still anticipate the Dodgers to invest heavily in. I know, did not perform well during the postseason. 113 WRC plus in the regular season. He was, by wins above replacement from Fangraphs, a top 12 outfielder in the game of baseball, at least by WAR metric. Now, that's not a WAR per plate appearances or a WAR per appearance type of measure, so he's not a top 12 outfielder in the game of baseball by that metric, but it shows you how much value he was able to provide and how consistently he was out there. I fully expect Andy Pages to be an everyday outfielder for this club. I still expect him to get a good chunk of plate appearances. He's going to play center. He's going to potentially play right field or move over to right field if Teoscar Hernandez is taken out of the game late defensively. Could be an option for him. He's going to be an everyday type of player for this club, or at least that's what my expectation for Andy Pages is. I fully anticipate last year's 624. I fully expect another 600 plate appearances being invested into Andy Pages. Again, continue to invest in your younger players. Andy Pages is absolutely part of that mix and provided immense value last year, even though the struggles in the postseason were real. Hopefully we're able to see some improvements with Andy Pages going forward, maybe a little bit with the plate discipline, but really I just want to see Andy Pages be aggressive and know that he's good, because that type of player is what made Andy Pages so good last year. It wasn't when he was passive early in the season. He was very passive early in the season and was very much in between and questioning who he was. As soon as he put a little bit more of that aggressive nature, started to rob some home runs, you started to see the true and real Andy Pages start to perform. Let's continue and move on. Again, don't have all the time in the world to be able to do today, but let's continue on with this research and conversation. Tommy Edman. Now, Tommy Edman's role is going to be fascinating this season because how the Dodgers might implement him might be different from what the ideal role for Tommy Edman is. Obviously, coming off of surgery, which he is undergoing this offseason, but I think that is something where I'm not as concerned about that. When you look at Tommy Edman as an overall player, what made him so valuable being able to come into the organization? It was the fact that he could play every single position and be able to fill in anywhere that the Dodgers need at a league average basis, which means if Max Muncy goes down with an injury, you know who could turn in there and step in and fill some of the shoes. It's Tommy Edman. He could play third base at a pretty good rate and provide you with at least a league average offensive bat. That's the value of Tommy Edman. In addition, he's incredibly good defensively, especially at second base, can play a good, solid center field as well. Some of the primary positions, including shortstop, Tommy Edman can be able to fill in. That versatility is so incredibly important. But as an offensive player, when everybody is healthy, where is Tommy Edman at his best? Tommy Edman's at his best against left-handed pitching. It's about 114 WRC plus against lefties versus right-handers at the plus side of the platoon. It is closer to about a 78, 79 WRC plus versus righties. It's not as good versus right-handed pitching as it is versus left-handed pitching, which means ideally, if you're talking about an ideal role that is still incredibly valuable for the Los Angeles Dodgers, I don't see it as an everyday player for Tommy Edman. I see it more as a platoon bat versus left-handed pitching, playing second base every single time that there's a left-handed starter and left-handed pitcher, being able to fill in plate appearances as the game goes on versus lefties. But I see more value with Tommy Edman being able to fill in across the board positionally and being able to provide really solid defensive value for there and be able to fill in as injuries come up, because while we can map out some of these plate appearances right here, the reality is it's very likely that one of these players is going to get injured next year. And the plate appearances that we're mapping out right now are going to go down specifically because of injuries. And Tommy Edman can really help fill in the shoes right there, or fill in the holes right there. But as far as mapping out plate appearances for Tommy Edman, and this is where I think, especially because my expectation is the Dodgers are going to add an outfield bat, just because I think there are more outfield options as opposed to second-based options that make sense. Yes, I know some Dodgers fans want to go to Bo Bichette. I have questions about his defense that he is able to provide, even though he technically won't be playing the shortstop. But I still think that whoever gets him would have to pay him for shortstop dollars, which means and with some of the defensive liability that he has shown he is at the major league level, he has to hit to be able to perform, which causes a little bit of hesitation for somebody that relies more on base hits. As Bo Bichette does. I just don't know how that contract is going to age, which means I'm not fully anticipating the Dodgers to be all in on the Bo Bichette sweepstakes, especially because he's not somebody that absolutely dominates against right-handed pitching. I think it's Brendan Donovan in the second base position. I mentioned him quite a bit, but because I think I like him a lot better than the other second baseman. But there's a lot of other outfielders that the Dodgers could turn to, which means I think there is more likely to be a hole opened up at the second base position for either an Alex Freeland or a Hae-Sung Kim, who perform better against right-handed pitching than they do left-handed pitching, to be able to fill into the mix. And so I think you could really see a platoon type situation for Tommy Edman. And I think less playing time for him actually is going to be benefit for him, benefit for the Dodgers, and really be able to highlight the strengths that Tommy Edman has. Talking about plate appearances, we're going to put him at about 350 for right now. Okay, so looking at it right now, we have 1,650 plate appearances remaining. What we're going to do right now is we're actually going to turn to the specific off-season edition, because it is my expectation that the Los Angeles Dodgers are going to add some sort of player, whether this is a free agent outfielder, whether this is a trade for an outfielder or a second baseman. I think this is going to somebody that's going to get significant playing time for the Dodgers, and I don't think we can go forward with the rest of the analysis without going and investing some playing time with this specific outfielder or second baseman that the Dodgers could target. I think this is somebody that's going to be playing pretty much full time. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put 500 plate appearances for this. This could be a Steven Kwan. This could be a Kyle Tucker. This could be a Cody Bellinger. This could also be if the Dodgers turn to if things get too expensive and they turn into Plan C or Plan D. This could also be somebody like Mike Yastrzemski. This could be just a lot of different people. I'm just going to put 500 plate appearances for that right now, just so we don't forget about off-season additions to be able to add to the mix. Alex Call. If we're talking about Alex Call, his role, I think, is going to be, and the amount of playing time that he's going to get, is going to be dependent on what happens and who the Dodgers actually bring in. If they go out and get more of a hits well versus right-handed pitching type of option, but somebody that doesn't hit as well versus lefties, I think you could see a platoon type role really form up for an Alex Call to get a little bit more regular plate appearances, even if it's on the short side of the platoon. So, for example, if they bring in somebody like a Donovan, or if they bring in somebody like a Yastrzemski, or they bring in a Wilyer Abreu via the trade market who does not hit as well versus left-handed pitching, I think you could see a real role for Alex Call. Or even if they have Ryan Ward be part of the mix and they trust Wardo and they add in a true second baseman, but they want Ryan Ward to be part of the outfield situation, I think you could see a little bit more playing time for Alex Call. He's still going to play a massive role, especially late defensively in games, and I think they still have to give him plate appearances. Look, Alex Call, I think, is undervalued for what he's able to produce for this team. Still around a league average type of hitter. Slightly is 114 WRC plus over the past 3 seasons versus left-handed pitching. He's been solid versus lefties and can take a main role versus lefties and hold his own in whatever position that they give him. I think he's going to get a decent amount of playing time. I'm not expecting an extraordinary amount of playing time, especially because he's on the short side of the platoon. And if they add a more regular outfielder, that's going to really cut down into the plate appearances that Alex Call has. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put it at about 250. Again, because he's likely to only face versus left-handed pitching, and he is somebody who just as an overall basis, I don't anticipate the Dodgers to give a ton of playing time, especially if the outfielder they bring in is on a more full-time basis. But still, you'll see a decent amount of playing time this upcoming season. We have 900 plate appearances left, and we haven't given any to Miguel Rojas or Kike Hernandez. Now, Miguel Rojas is somebody that I fully anticipate the Dodgers to bring back. I see him as being that role with a Max Muncy in that platoon, being that guy who can give Max Muncy some time off at third base and being able to hit well versus left-handed pitching. I think that's a good role for him. Past 3 seasons, 317 plate appearances, 337, 423. I would probably expect a little bit of a cutback. Probably a significant cutback for Miguel Rojas, only because I think there's other guys that can fill in the mix with the other defensive position, and I think the Dodgers would be wise to invest some of the plate appearances that were given to Miguel Rojas previously into either a Alex Freeland or a Ha-Seong Kim going forward. So what I'm going to do with Miguel Rojas, he's on the short side of the platoon with a Max Muncy, can fill in, does not have to play every day, doesn't have to play a whole lot, and can still be valuable addition part of the club. I'm only going to give 200 plate appearances to Miguel Rojas. Not a whole lot. Kike Hernandez. Kike is somebody that Casey and I have had a lot of different conversations about this, especially recently. And it is something where I don't know what the best thing for the Dodgers to be able to do with Kike Hernandez is. And the reason why I say that is you look over the course of the past 3 regular seasons, 70 WRC plus, 82 WRC plus, 73 WRC plus. A regular season player, Kike Hernandez is not. October player is what Kike Hernandez is known for. If he was healthy to start the season, it would actually be my recommendation not to bring Kike Hernandez back. That would be my recommendation for the Los Angeles Dodgers because he is injured and because there's likely injuries to be able to pop up throughout the course of the season and because the Los Angeles Dodgers have a history of wanting to bring him to part in the mix and specifically because he won't be back until maybe June, maybe July. The later, probably the better for the Los Angeles Dodgers with their future investment and because they only have 700 plate appearances left to give up for the rest of the players that are part of this mix. I would anticipate the Dodgers to bring Kike back, but only because he is not expected to be back until later in the season. I would only expect Kike Hernandez with him being able to come back, and this would have to be in coincidence with somebody being injured or with completely moving off of Alex Freeland or Ha-Seong Kim. Again, on this roster, if you add in an external outfielder, and you add Miguel Rojas and Kike Hernandez with everybody healthy, assuming Alex Call is part of the mix, there's no room for Alex Freeland. There's no room for Ha-Seong Kim. There's no room for Ryan Ward on this roster. Zero. No room for them. I would assume somebody would probably be injured at that point, or they would find some sort of roster manipulation type of way. Give Kike Hernandez, I'm just giving him 100 plate appearances. That's all I can really see for Kike Hernandez going into this season. Being able to fit him into the mix late in the season, have him potentially ready to go for October. That's about the extent of what I can see the Los Angeles Dodgers being able to invest with him with his injury. Just one thing before we go into the Freeland, Kim, Ward, Estuary, Ruiz. There is a category. Now, what I've done with this category is I've named it Other/DFA hitters. What this is additional hitters that are sprinkled into the mix throughout the course of the regular season that you did not expect getting plate appearances for the Los Angeles Dodgers, but somehow ended up with plate appearances. This is like the Buddy Kennedys, who come and fill in the mix when there is injuries that take place. I'm trying to think of some other name. There's a lot of different examples, and we've seen this get 49 plate appearances, 143, and 90 plate appearances for the Dodgers. I'm going to pencil in about 35 plate appearances in this category, only because this is something that typically happens for the Dodgers is they have some players that you do not anticipate fill in the mix. 35 is actually the lowest of this chunk just because I think there's some other guys that they can turn to, but I would expect probably at some point in the season, even though we have no idea how the math's going to work out, some other player fill in for a week or two for the Dodgers, like an Eddie Rosario. Remember, Eddie Rosario played 4 games for the world champion Los Angeles Dodgers. He's going to get a World Series ring for his contributions for the Dodgers. Some guys like that are going to fill into the mix. That only leaves you with 565 plate appearances for Alex Freeland, Ha-Seong Kim, Ryan Ward, and Estuary Ruiz. In particular, Alex Freeland, Ha-Seong Kim, and Ryan Ward. That doesn't leave you a whole lot of playing time for either of these guys. Now, I think, based off the way that I see it, under the assumption that the Dodgers add an outfielder or somebody that's going to play more outfield than they are going to play with second base, my assumption with this conversation is we're going to look primarily at Alex Freeland and Ha-Seong Kim as being the guys that you can turn to, primarily because there can be an opening at second base versus right-handed pitching. Again, plus side of the platoon, much more plate appearances versus righties than there are versus lefties. Alex Freeland and Ha-Seong Kim I see as getting the bulk share of plate appearances versus the right-handed pitching, which means that one of these guys is going to get a decent amount of playing time this upcoming season. Casey and I had a really good conversation back and forth as to which one of these guys should it be. And there's good arguments for either of them being the one who should get the playing time. There also has been some good arguments, and I've had some conversations in the comment section about Ryan Ward, because I think Ryan Ward actually is the guy that is most major league ready as a player, particularly with his bat. I think he has the fewest holes in his game. The question is, can the Dodgers actually find a role for Ryan Ward to be able to fill into the game and be able to fill in some shoes for the Dodgers to be able to fill? And I just don't know if there's an actual role for Ryan Ward on this team unless the Dodgers, and this has been suggested, unless the Dodgers wanted to trade Teoscar Hernandez, bring in an external addition, and then platoon Ryan Ward and Alex Call in the outfield. Or even if they don't want to trade a Teoscar Hernandez and they want to bring in a Brendan Donovan to play more second base, have Ryan Ward be the platoon outfielder with an Alex Call part of the mix. There just isn't a whole lot of room for Ryan Ward into the mix, and it could be a little bit more insurance type of option. And for the sake of Ryan Ward, because I'm under the assumption that Alex Freeland and Ha-Seong Kim are going to be the guys that are going to take primary roles, if that is the case and they bring in somebody that's going to play mostly outfield for the Dodgers, my expectation, or at least hope, is that Ryan Ward gets traded. I think that is just for Ryan Ward to get traded and not be treated as depth in the Dodgers system, just to keep him around and waste his entire career in Oklahoma City. That would be the worst thing possible for Ryan Ward if there is not an avenue and path for him to be able to grow and develop at the major league level. That's why I'm actually not going to give any plate appearances to Ryan Ward at this time, not because he doesn't deserve it, but because my hope in this scenario would be that he gets traded if the Dodgers, under the assumption that the Dodgers bring in somebody to mainly play the outfield. Although you can divvy up the 565 plate appearances between Alex Freeland, Ha-Seong Kim, and Ryan Ward as well. Esteury Ruiz could be very well part of the mix. I'm just going to throw him, let's just throw him 15 plate appearances just to make it easy with 550 plate appearances left. What we're going to do, we're going to throw 275 apiece to Alex Freeland and Ha-Seong Kim, even though I would expect the Dodgers to be able to divvy up that a little bit different, or at least more imbalanced, because I think somebody's going to win the spot in spring training and get much more plate appearances than the other. But that would give them an increase, of what they had at the minor leagues. And this is without me making any sort of prediction of who would win that free agent battle. One thing to note, that gives us exactly 6,200 plate appearances to be able to map out. That is low on the other/DFA candidates. That means that Dodgers aren't bringing anybody via trade, which, you look at the past history, they brought in people for trade. That means no 40-man roster or non-40-man roster minor league hitters getting any plate appearances. There's none of that. That's part of the mix. That's with giving only 500 plate appearances to additional outfield options, and with just 100 plate appearances to Kike Hernandez, 200 to Miguel Rojas, and none to Ryan Ward. And you're still dealing with a tight crunch in the math. This is on the very early onset of the offseason, position player wide, how I would envision going into the season the outlook to be for playing time for the position players. Now, this will not be perfect, and this will probably age poorly, as there will be some guys, perhaps they won't be on the team, will get injured, will play significantly less playing time, but at least in the early offset, what this is intended to show you guys is to try to find room, to try to find a whole bunch of different plate appearances for Ha-Seong Kim, or Alex Freeland, or Dalton Rushing. It's really difficult, and that is with me giving less playing time, significantly less playing time, or at least a little bit less playing time to Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, to Max Muncy and Will Smith, and it is still difficult to be able to find playing time for each of these young guys, which means that the Dodgers have to be strategic with how they invest in the resources that they have, and the resources that they have are time, their plate appearances, their major league roster spots. They have to be strategic with how they use that, and they have to find ways to be able to innovate the young guys into the mix, to be able to, one, grow and develop them. Growth and development can happen at the minor leagues, and certainly there's room for some of these guys to be able to potentially develop at the minor leagues, but a lot of room and development and time to fail has to be had at the major league level as well, and especially for if Ha-Seong Kim and Alex Freeland are going to take more prominent roles in 2027 for the Dodgers. If Alex Freeland is a realistic possibility to take over Max Muncy at third base, you best believe you better invest playing time in this year and give him room to fail in 2026 to see if he can take on that burden in 2027. There are important investments that the Dodgers have to make, not monetarily, which can happen, and if you add two external options part of the mix that are not Miguel Rojas and Kike Hernandez, who could get a lot less investments, but besides the external outfield addition that is likely, or second base addition that is likely, if you add an additional one, you're going to see a serious cut, and that's not going to come from the major league players, because you can't cut from major league guys for minor league guys unless guys get injured. It's going to come from some of the younger players, which even this is light on some of the investment for the younger guys if you want to see them grow and develop at the major league level with a more consistent basis. But I think this is part of the process and part in the investment that the Dodgers have to be able to do, and the decisions that they have to be able to map out before they can make any sort of strict decisions going into the winter meetings next week. They have to have a game plan of how things are going to work out throughout the entire system of operations that the Dodgers have at the major league level. And if they want to invest 300 plate appearances in Dalton Rushing, if they want to invest 350 into Alex Freeland and Ha-Seong Kim, maybe it's best the Dodgers don't go overboard with the additions that they have. Not to say that that is the Dodgers' strategy that they should do, nor is it that you should say, we are going to aim for this, knowing that injuries will happen and will fall short on the number of plate appearances that you're mapping out. But these are considerations that the Dodgers should have. Now, just a quick note, we're actually not going to be able to go through this. I take too long and talk for too long, as a lot of people say when talking about some of the things that I'm able to contribute to the show. I just have a lot of things to be able to say. This is the Dodgers pitching staff. One thing to note, if you were filling this out on your own, is the innings pitched, as we had talked about previously, is not the regular season major league innings pitched. This includes non-rehab minor league innings, as well as major league regular season and postseason innings. So this isn't a guide to say, Tyler Glasnow pitched 111 innings pitched at the major league level last year. You look at his baseball reference and you will say that's not true. That's intended to be able to show what he did regular season and postseason to give you an overall idea of what his workload actually was. So then you can go and actually divvy out numbers for him this upcoming season. This works the exact same way as what we had talked about previously with projecting the plate appearances, so you can go ahead and fill this out on your own. One thing I will note from the show that I did not remember how many innings were given to other pitchers or DFA pitchers. You look at the past 3 seasons, this category, the Noah Davis, the Nabil Krismats, a whole bunch of different players that the Dodgers have brought in to fill in innings. Past 3 seasons, just keep in mind when you're filling this out, 134 innings, 177 innings in 2024, and 106, which means we were a little light, Casey and I were, when we were trying to divvy out innings on the number of other innings that are given out for the DFA type of pitchers, as well as we didn't have position players or trade deadline acquisitions. This might be something that we do on an additional show, where I might be able to go into a little bit further as the offseason is able to progress, especially if you guys enjoyed this episode of the show, diving into the position players and looking at the number of plate appearances that are given out to each one of the players, because it's a fun exercise to be able to do. It's difficult to be able to predict, but I think this is important because it shows you where your priorities are. Often we can say we can have multiple priorities at the same time, but they're not realistically attainable. This will give a path and an avenue to see if something is actually realistically attainable, or if the Dodgers should look in a different direction. Perhaps you're not satisfied and don't think it's going to be good for the development of some of the players if they get this amount of playing time, which is the only playing time that could be available if they bring in some of the players that you're wanting them to bring in back. And so perhaps a trade actually would be good for that particular player, not because that player isn't good or isn't talented or couldn't be part of the equation, just because there isn't playing time for him in the Los Angeles Dodgers uniform. So that's a little bit of things for you to be able to do. Again, the link to the spreadsheet is in the description of this video as well as in the chat right now. Download it, be able to fill this out on your own, and work through the missing pieces to try to be able to map out everything on your own so you can see just how difficult it can be for the Dodgers to be able to divvy out the plate appearances and innings pitched total for the 2026 season. This is far too early. This will not be accurate as to the results, but this is to get within the range of accuracy and to show you the cost it takes to be able to invest in young players. But investing in young players very well could be worth it to maintain or continue and sustain the dynasty of the Los Angeles Dodgers. I can't thank you guys enough for being able to be part of the show. I know you guys have been in the comment section quite a bit. I will not be able to get into that. I actually have to go in just a couple minutes. If you guys have specific comments that you have and questions you want to answer, I do my very best to be able to address those and answer those in the comments and the videos that I am in. Please leave that in the comment section of this video, not in the chat that we have. Won't be able to see that for a little bit. But in the comment section of the video, please go ahead and look at that, and we'll be able to dive into that a little bit further. I can't thank you guys enough for being able to tune in. We will be back again within the next couple of days. I'm sure Casey and I will be able to do another show, as well as Casey, I think, has some interviews lined up over the course of the next couple of days. Until next time, though, thank you for tuning in. God bless, and go Dodgers.